boogeyman.
Run, Randy, run!
Welcome to the Inferno. I'm Papa John, and I'm here to guide you through all the hellish sides of horror. And if you'd like to join me on that journey, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And today, I'm continuing my road to Spiral, my Saw review series, with the second movie, Saw 2. And in all honesty, I will always acknowledge that the first Saw is a brilliantly made movie with great writing, great atmosphere, and production design. But for me personally, for whatever reason, it's never impacted me the same way it seems to impact other people, but I still gave it a pretty good score. But this movie, on the other hand, this is probably going to be a fairly controversial, maybe controversial or unpopular review, because this movie I honestly loved to death. And so let's get started. In Saw 2, you have Donnie Wahlberg, whose son gets kidnapped by Tobin Bell and thrown into the typical Saw games, and they're in basically this escape room type of house that they have to escape. The son is, Donnie Wahlberg is trying to find out where this house is as he interrogates Tobin Bell throughout the movie. And so the first thing I have to mention about Saw 2 is the fact that there are so many just awesome Easter eggs and references and stuff that pays homage to classic horror movies in this movie. And I know a lot of horror movies do that. Better horror movies have done that. It's just something about this movie that I found myself just really loving about it. And this movie kicks off with probably the best one. The opening scene to this movie pays homage to my personal favorite horror movie opening scene of all time, and that is from Mario Bava's Black Sunday. Leigh Whannell, who did help write the script for Saw 2, has stated in the past that he is a big fan of classic Italian horror movies, and you can see that in the opening scene of this movie. You just have this death mask with the spikes that plunge into its victim. And in Black Sunday, granted the movie takes place centuries, or at least the opening scenes takes place centuries in the past, and so that they don't have the mechanical contraptions that the Saw 2 opening has. But you have this spiked death mask, which gets plunged or hammered into the witch's face, into its victim's face. And I freaking love the opening to Black Sunday. It's even the opening to my YouTube videos. The Inferno introduction starts off with the image of the death mask being plunged into the witch's face, if you pay attention to my intro. But even beyond that, you just have some great Easter eggs and references to great classic horror movies. You have a Shining reference with 237. You have a Last House on the Left, which gets referenced.
It's the last house on the left.
And so right then and there, you have my favorite horror movie being referenced, as well as the directorial debut of my favorite horror director. And just like the first movie, this one also has amazing production design and a great atmosphere. And it's also an extremely well-written movie by Leigh Whannell with some help from Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed this movie, as well as a few other Saw movies, and I believe is even the director for Spiral coming up. So his name will be mentioned quite a few times in this review series. And another thing in this movie that I thought was really done well was the execution of the theme of the survival instinct, because the first movie was mainly just about teaching life lessons, where in this movie, Tobin Bell, Jigsaw, even says something about he's testing whether people have the survival instinct a couple times in the movie. And throughout the movie, if you look at some of the shots and the editing style during some of the trap sequences, it actually shows the audience, it shows us a way out of the trap, a way to survive the trap. But because the victims are so disoriented and so scared for their life, it shows that they lack the survival instinct to think clearly in the situation, to notice those aspects, those small little details that will survive, that would help them survive the traps. And so I just thought that was a really nice touch. And another thing about this movie is the traps in it very much have an escape room type of feel to them. And I know this came out long before the escape room movie, but, you know, escape rooms have existed for quite a while before that movie came out. And that's something I just kind of had a decent amount of fun with and really enjoyed about this movie. And then I loved the interactions between Donnie Wahlberg and Tobin Bell in this movie. And that's a thing where the first movie, for understandable, obvious reasons, Tobin Bell wasn't really in it. The villain of that movie was basically a tape recorder. You know, I mean, he was in like one scene, you know, where he's like cloaked and he has like one line. But overall, the main villain in that first movie is just like a tape recorder, which is perfectly fine because they went much more for a mystery aspect in terms of like who is doing the crimes. Where in this movie they know, and it provides this just awesome just interactions and interrogation type of scenes between Donnie Wahlberg and Tobin Bell. Now obviously this is not a perfect movie. The acting still isn't great, but a lot of great horror movies don't have the best of acting but are still great movies. But I do think Donnie Wahlberg as the lead, and even Tobin Bell kind of being somewhat of a lead in the movie, are big step ups from the two leads from the original movie. But in terms of the kind of ensemble cast of characters that you have in the house, I don't entirely think they're all the best. I still have a lot of fun with the characters, but like Xavier, for instance, he's hamming it up. He's just going way too overboard with his performance in this movie. But I still kind of had a lot of fun watching it. And I forgot to mention earlier, I love how this movie kind of explores the idea of legacy with Jigsaw and how Tobin Bell's character will actually die eventually. You know, he has mortality. And so carrying on the legacy is very much kind of a scary aspect to think about, you know, and it kind of just goes back to an idea of copycat killers who do exist in real life. And so it adds somewhat of a horrific element there when you get to the twist ending of this movie. So what circle of hell does the second Saw movie belong in? Now, I put the first Saw movie in the second circle, and so given that, I'm probably going to have an unpopular opinion in terms of where I place this movie compared to the first movie. But in my opinion, this is a step up from the first movie. Not a big step up by any means, but I still think it's a step up. I personally thought it was a better movie, and I personally enjoyed it quite a bit more than the first movie, even though I acknowledge the first movie is really well made, even if it doesn't impact me the way it seems to impact other people. But in terms of Saw 2, I'm definitely going to put it in the first circle of hell, towards the top of the various degrees of greatness. Go ahead and share your thoughts on Saw 2 in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash that thumbs up icon. And make sure to stay tuned for the rest of the Saw review series, The Road to Spiral, by clicking that subscribe button and hitting the notification bell as well. And as always, have a hell of a good time.